The silent room, the rain hit the windows of the Mountain View house like soft tapping fingers. Inside, everything was quiet. Sundar Pichai sat in his study, looking at an old photo of his family. He wasn't the CEO right now. He was just a father. And tonight he felt a storm inside him stronger than the one outside. His daughter, Anaya, had come home from college early. There was something about her eyes that caught him. They didn't shine the same way. She had always been a calm, thoughtful child, but now her calm felt different. It was heavy, like silence before something breaks. Anaya stood in the hallway for a long time. She finally walked into the study and closed the door behind her. "Papa, I need to tell you something," she said, her voice steady, but her hands trembling slightly. Sundar nodded. "I'm listening." She took a deep breath. "I'm leaving. My program? I'm not finishing engineering. I'm starting my own fashion line." Sundar blinked. The silence was sharp. For a moment, he didn't move. "Fashion?" he asked. Carefully, Anaya nodded. "Yes, I've been designing for over a year. I've built a whole collection, and I'm ready to launch." He wanted to smile or support her, or say he was proud. But he just sat there, quiet. He had faced billion-dollar decisions with more ease than this one. But this was personal. This was his daughter choosing a world so far from the one he knew. "Why didn't you tell us earlier?" he asked softly. "Because I was scared," she said. "Scared that you'd be disappointed? Or that you'd stop believing in me?" He looked at her for a long moment. Then he stood up, walked over, and held her hand. "You're brave to tell me," he said. "But, Anaya, fashion is not an easy world. It's full of noise and shadows. It's beautiful, but brutal." Anaya smiled, but there was a tear on her cheek. "I know, but I also know who I am." That night, Sundar couldn't sleep. He walked through the house, remembering when she was a little girl, wrapping towels around herself like dresses, pretending she was on a runway. He had laughed then, but now it wasn't funny. It was real. The next morning, the news broke. Anaya, Pichai, daughter of Google's CEO, was dropping out of Stanford to launch a fashion startup. The internet exploded. Headlines flew. Some praised her courage. Others mocked her choice. People called it a stunt, a rebellion, a spoiled move. But no one really knew what was coming. Not even Sundar. Asterisk, asterisk. The first designs came out the next week. Simple, elegant, bold. Stories. Our first piece was called Unfinished Dreams. A soft gray dress with uneven lines, symbolizing dreams that don't follow the rules. It sold out in 2 hours. But with the success came something unexpected. Threats. Harsh comments. Strangers saying she was ruining her father's name. One message stood out. "You'll never be more than a rich kid playing dress up. You don't belong here." Anaya didn't cry. But she saved that message, because deep down, she wanted to prove that voice wrong. Asterisk, asterisk, Sundar saw her working late into the night, sketching by hand, sewing her own samples, talking to young women who wanted to feel strong through what they wore. And then something else happened. A fashion editor in Paris, one of the most respected in the world, shared Anaya's design on her page. She called it the future of emotional clothing. By morning, Anaya had 5 offers from global fashion houses to buy her brand. But Anaya said no, because she had something else. Planned. Something that no one saw coming. Especially not her father. And especially not the world. Asterisk, asterisk. But while Anaya was rising in her own way, something was about to happen that would shake her world again. Just when she felt she was beginning to breathe. A quiet visitor appeared outside her apartment in San Francisco. A woman with a limp and a bag full of old letters. And what she said would change Anaya's life forever. Asterisk, the woman at the doors, streets of San Francisco, were quiet that morning. Fog curled low between the buildings, soft and haunting, like forgotten thoughts lingering in cold corners. Anaya stood barefoot in her apartment, cradling a cup of tea, her body wrapped in one of her own creations, a warm, draped shawl made from recycled fabric stitched with invisible seams. It was called Home Between Moments. The name came from a poem she wrote when she was 14. She was tired, not from work, but from the pressure. Every article, every post, every interview kept asking her the same thing. What does it feel like to be Sundar Pichai's daughter? No one ever asked what it felt like to be Anaya. No one asked what it cost to step outside a legacy like her father's and try to build her own. She wasn't running away from his shadow. She was trying to make light of her own dot as she moved to the window. The doorbell rang. It was strange. She wasn't expecting anyone. Deliveries were usually left at the building entrance. For a moment, she hesitated. Something about the ring felt quiet, almost humble, as if the person behind the door wasn't sure they deserved to press it. She opened the door slowly. There stood a woman, mid-60s, short gray hair. Her clothes were worn but clean. One shoe had a thicker sole, likely to help with the limp she clearly carried. Her eyes, however, were the most striking part. They were tired, but not defeated. They had the look of someone who had searched for something too long, and maybe found it too late. You don't know me, the woman said gently, but I knew your mother. Long ago, before she met your father. Anaya froze. Her mother? This stranger knew her mother. I have something for her. For you, really? I had promised I would deliver it. Someday. It took me longer than I thought. Anaya stepped aside. The woman walked in with slow, careful movements. She carried a worn leather bag, its handle patched with old thread. She placed it on the table, opened it with shaking hands, and pulled out a bundle of letters tied with a pale blue ribbon. These were written 25 years ago, she said. Your mother and I lived in a hostel in Chennai. We were friends. Sisters, really. We dreamed together. She dreamed of a family. I dreamed of becoming a painter. Life didn't go as planned for either of us. Anaya sat down, watching the woman with wide eyes. Her throat felt dry. This wasn't the kind of morning she expected. What happened? She asked softly. The woman smiled, but it was a sad, crooked smile. Your mother got a scholarship. She left. We lost touch. She gave me these letters in case something ever happened to her. She said, if anything goes wrong, find my daughter. Tell her who I really was before all this. I've kept them ever since. Waited for the right moment. Anaya's hands trembled as she took the bundle. The paper was soft with age. Some envelopes had oil stains. Others were torn slightly at the edges. They smelled faintly of jasmine and old notebooks. The woman looked around the apartment. You've made something beautiful here, she said. I can see your mother and everything, in the curves of your design, in the silence of your space. She was quiet too, but her silence was full of strength. Why didn't she tell me? Anaya asked, why didn't she show me these? The woman looked down. Maybe she wanted to protect you, or maybe she was waiting for you to be ready. Sometimes, love doesn't come in straight lines. Anaya nodded, unsure of what to feel. Gratitude, confusion, pain. I should go now, the woman said, reaching for her bag. Wait, Anaya said. What's your name? Mira, she answered gently. Mira-san. Before she left, she turned one last time. Open the fourth letter first. Your mother said that one was written for when you lost faith in yourself. Anaya didn't speak. She just held the letters close to her chest, as if trying to feel her mother's heartbeat through them. That night, after hours of hesitation, she finally lit a candle and opened the fourth letter. The handwriting was graceful and small, written in blue ink that had slightly bled through the paper. My dearest Anaya, if you are reading this, it means you're walking a path I never saw coming. Maybe you feel alone. Maybe you feel unsure. But listen to me. You are not a mistake. You are not lost. You are not smaller than the world that tries to measure you. You are my greatest design. Not stitched by thread, but by every choice I made to become the kind of woman who could raise you. I hope you will choose kindness when others don't. I hope you will wear your pain like art, not to show your wounds, but to show your healing. You are more than my daughter. You are your own light. Shine without permission. Love Amma tears blurred the words by the time she finished. And for the first time in weeks, Anaya didn't feel like she had to prove herself. She just had to continue. The next day, something unexpected happened. A fashion critic who had earlier mocked her work called it too emotional, too soft, too naive, released a public video apology. He admitted that after reading one of Anaya's interviews and seeing her latest piece titled Grief in Silk, something changed in him. He said he wore the shirt she designed during the final days of his father's life, and for the first time, he felt comfort and clothing. Anaya watched the video alone in her studio. She didn't cry. She just sat still for a long time, the letter from her mother resting quietly beside her sewing machine. But not everyone was changing. A powerful investor who had earlier shown interest in her work now wanted to reshape her brand, make it more commercial, more trend-focused, less personal. He offered a deal. $10 million upfront. Full creative control would go to his board. He said he could make her famous beyond imagination. Asterisk. You can be the next big name, he said over a call. But you need to stop designing from your emotions. No one buys sadness. They buy fantasy. Anaya didn't reply immediately. She closed her eyes. And then she spoke the quietest words. That would carry the strongest echo. If sadness can't be sold, then maybe the world needs more of it. Maybe we've forgotten how to wear truth. She hung up the phone. And just like that, she walked away from $10 million. That evening, she went to her father's house. She hadn't seen him in days. Sundar opened the door. His eyes looked tired. He had just returned from a board meeting. They sat on the balcony together. The sky painted orange and gold. She handed him the letters. I think you should read these, she said. He opened one. He didn't say much. But as the sun dipped behind the hills, his hand reached over to hold hers. You remind me of your mother more every day. He whispered. Then I'm becoming who I was meant to be, she replied. They sat there now, as CEO and daughter, but as two souls trying to understand how stories get passed down, not through titles, but through truth. A week later, Anaya received an invitation. An anonymous designer wanted to collaborate on a private collection. No name, no brand. Just a place. Kyoto. The message said only one thing. You don't know me, but I've worn your silence before. I think we speak the same language. Come to Kyoto. I'll show you. Anaya looked at the email for a long time, and something in her heart stirred. Was it a trick? A trap? Or something more? Something that would either break her or set her free? She booked her flight. And told no one. Not even Sundar, because some journeys are meant to begin alone. Asterisk. The red door in Kyoto train moved like a whisper through the Japanese countryside, its windows catching glimpses of cherry blossoms and passing temples half lost in mist. Inside the quiet carriage, Anaya sat alone, her eyes fixed on the fading horizon. She had barely spoken since she arrived in Japan. The silence of the country, its gentle order, matched something inside her, a quiet chaos that needed space to breathe. Kyoto wasn't like San Francisco. It didn't shout, it didn't try to sell itself. It simply existed, gracefully, like a poem with no punctuation. Everything had a rhythm here. The trees, the wind, the way strangers bowed slightly as they passed. It was a place that felt older. Then time, as if the streets remembered everything, every footstep, every sorrow, every dream that had once walked across its stones. When the train pulled into the station, she stepped out into cool afternoon light. The message had given no details. Only a time, a district, and a description. Look for the red door with no handle. She carried nothing but a leather bag and a folded piece of her own design, a dark plum shawl sewn with uneven stitches, meant to represent the idea that not all healing is pretty. She wandered slowly through narrow streets lined with wooden houses and low-hanging lanterns. The air smelled like old rain and cedar. After almost 40 minutes of walking, she found it. A narrow path led between two houses. Down the path stood a red door, simple, matte, and, just as promised, handleless dot. She stared at it, uncertain what to do. She was beginning to think she'd been misled, when suddenly the door clicked open, not from her touch, but from the inside. A soft voice came through. "You came?" Anaya stepped inside. The room was dim and warm, lit by paper lamps and filtered sunlight. Shelves lined with fabric rolls and sketchbooks covered the walls. Old sewing machines rested like relics of another century. At the center of it all stood a man, tall, slender, wearing a long linen coat and round glasses that magnified his gentle eyes. He bowed slightly. "My name is Jiro. I was once your father's friend, a long time ago." Anaya felt something shift in her chest. "You knew my father?" Jiro nodded. "Before he became Sundar Pichai, he was just Sundar. And before he came to Silicon Valley, he came here for 3 months to think, to breathe, to understand who he wanted to be." Anaya was stunned. Her father had never mentioned anything about coming to Japan. "He was here after your mother's illness," Jiro continued, motioning for her to sit. "He was broken in a quiet way, like someone who had too many thoughts and not enough language to speak them." He handed her a small cup of tea, jasmine and rice, soft, earthy. "He helped me design a project for orphan children. He coded something for our local school, and he hand-stitched small bags with embroidered words from Tamil poetry. Not for sale, just for me." Anaya sat down, her mind trying to fit this version of her father with the man she knew. "He told me he wanted to raise a daughter who believed in kindness more than ambition," Jiro said. "But he was afraid. He had grown up with little and success. It changed him, not completely, but enough to make him forget where softness lives." Anaya felt tears rise unexpectedly. "He never told me," she whispered. "About this place. About you, about any of this. Some men think protecting their children means hiding their past," Jiro said. "But I think you came here for a reason." He stood, walked to a wooden drawer, and pulled out a large book. Inside were dozens of design sketches, all hand-drawn, full of abstract shapes and gentle lines. "These are yours now," he said. "Your father never finished them, but they were made for you." Anaya opened the pages slowly. Each drawing had a note beside it. Sometimes just a word. Forgiveness, stillness, grace. They weren't just designs. They were emotions he had tried to shape into fabric dot, and then she found one page with a title that made her breath stop. For Anaya, if she ever becomes braver than I was. It was a coat, deep blue, long and loose, but with one hidden fold. Near the heart, like a secret you carry but never explain. "He wanted to give this to you," Jiro said. "But I think he'd have more time." They spent the next 3 days working together. Jiro showed her how to fold fabric. The Japanese way, no cutting, only shaping. He taught her to slow down, to let silence be part of the design. They ate meals together in silence, listening to rain fall on the roof like a soft MET Oro Ano Anaya felt something returning to her. Not certainty, but clarity. She wasn't here to become famous. She was here to remember why she began creating. In the first place, on the 4th night, Jiro handed her a letter. "This arrived yesterday," he said. "Addressed to you. No return name." Anaya opened it slowly. "You are being watched, not by me, but by them. Your silence has unsettled people who profit from noise. The more honest your work becomes, the more dangerous it will be to those who live off illusions. Be careful who you trust next. There was no signature. Her hands shook slightly. "Do you know who sent this?" she asked. Jiro shook his head. "But I believe it." 2 days later, she flew back to California. She left behind the coat her father had designed, but took a copy of it, folded tightly with notes written in the margins. When she arrived in San Francisco, she received another message from someone she hadn't spoken to in over a year. Her cousin, Rishi. He was her age, once her closest friend. Until something happened. A fight. A betrayal involving family property. They hadn't spoken since. But his message was short. "We need to talk." I found something in Amma's old apartment. I think it's about you. And it's not safe. Anaya sat frozen. How could so many pieces of the past be showing up now? First the letters, then Jiro, now Rishi. She messaged back one word. When his reply came instantly. Tonight. That evening. She stood outside the old building her mother had once lived in before marriage. It was strange seeing it again. Faded walls, narrow steps. The place looked smaller than she remembered. Rishi was waiting outside. He looked older, sharper around the eyes. But when he saw her, something softened. You look like her, he said. So, do you, she replied. They went inside quietly. He took her to a storage closet beneath the stairs. It was barely 4 feet high. He pulled out a dusty box covered in layers of fabric. Inside were photographs, journals, and one envelope marked, with her mother's handwriting, "Do not open until she is ready to walk alone." Rishi looked at her. "I almost didn't call you," he said. "But then I remembered how she used to hold your face in her hands when you cried, like the world couldn't touch you if she was near. She wanted you to have this. I'm sure of it." Anaya opened the envelope slowly. Inside was a memory card and a handwritten note. "If you're reading this, it means you're walking a path that might frighten others. But don't let their fear become your truth. This card holds the beginning of something you were born to finish. But be warned, not everyone will want you to see what's on it." Anaya looked up at Rishi, her voice barely a whisper. "What's on this card?" Rishi's face darkened. Something someone tried to erase. And in that moment, as they sat in the shadows of the past, one thing became clear. Anaya single quotes S journey wasn't just about fashion anymore. It was about legacy. About truth, and about a secret someone didn't want her to uncover. A secret that might destroy everything or set her free. Asterisk the hidden thread. Memory card sat on the kitchen table like something alive. Small, silent, but heavy with weight. Anaya had placed it there the moment she returned from Rishi's apartment, unable to bring herself to insert it into her laptop. It felt like a doorway she wasn't ready to walk through. Outside, the San Francisco night pressed against the windows. Fog crept across the glass, wrapping the city in a veil of silence. The world for once felt as uncertain as she did. She sat staring at the card for almost an hour. It didn't blink, it didn't whisper, but it waited. And finally, she gave in. She opened her laptop, slid the card in, and waited for the folder to appear. At first, there was nothing. Then one folder appeared. Archive_Vimana. She clicked it. Inside were several video files, a few PDFs, and one audio message labeled simply "Begin here." She hesitated, then pressed play. Her mother's voice filled the room. It was younger than she remembered, stronger, like a woman speaking not just to her daughter, but to history itself. If you're listening to this, then the choice is already yours. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm only telling you the truth. Anaya leaned in. Before your father became the CEO of anything, before he even finished college, he and I started a project. A quiet one, something no one talks about anymore. It was called Vimana. It began as a research tool for helping low-income communities use mobile technology. But soon, we discovered something bigger. An algorithm that could predict human behavior based on voice tone, facial movement, and even silence. Anaya blinked. This was not what she expected. We didn't know what we had. We were young, curious, naive. But one day, someone noticed. Someone powerful, someone we trusted. And everything changed. The audio cut off suddenly. Static. Followed. Then a second voice, deeper, distorted, came through. You were warned. You should have destroyed it. Now it's out of your hands. Anaya felt her breath catch in her throat. She checked the rest of the files. One was a short video, grainy, shot on an old phone. It showed her mother in a small room, typing rapidly on a laptop. She looked over her shoulder once, fear in her eyes. Another file was a letter, a scan of a handwritten note. Sundar, I've hidden the source code. If you ever decide to finish what we started, do it for her. Not for the world, not for power, but for truth. She deserves to know who she is and what she carries inside her. Anaya sat back, stunned, the weight of what she had just seen began to sink in. Her mother and father had built something powerful, and someone, or some group, had tried to bury it. And now she had the only copy left. But why? What was she supposed to do with it? She closed the laptop slowly. The room felt different now, like it had secrets hiding in its corners. She picked up her phone, her hands trembling, and called her father. He answered on the second ring. Anaya? We need to talk, she said. Now. When Sundar opened the door to his home, he already looked like a man bracing for something. Maybe he had known this day would come. Maybe he had been waiting for it in silence. They sat in the living room. No one else was home. It felt like the world had paused. Anaya placed the memory card on the table. I know about Vimana, she said quietly. Sundar didn't speak for a long time. His face didn't change. Only his hands moved, slowly folding together. The way he always did when he was trying to hold something in. I hoped you wouldn't find it, he said finally. But you knew I would, she replied. He nodded. Your mother and I started Vimana because we believe in something simple, that technology should serve the quietest voices. But we didn't realize how much power there was in listening, real listening. When the algorithm worked, it didn't just predict behavior. It exposed fear, truth, hidden grief. Companies didn't want that. They wanted control, manipulation. Anaya's heart pounded. So you buried it? We had to, he said. We were threatened, not by criminals, by board members, by investors, by people who smile in front of cameras and shake hands while planning which part of the truth. To erase, Anaya stood up, pacing, and now I have it. The only copy. Because your mother trusted you, Sundar said. She knew you'd use it the way it was meant to be used. Not to predict people, not to sell to them, but to understand them. She turned to face him. Why didn't you tell me? His voice broke slightly. Because I didn't want you to carry our ghosts. I wanted you to walk freely. But it was too late for that now. Over the next few days, everything shifted. Anaya moved back into her studio. She didn't speak publicly. She ignored calls from media. She worked quietly, designing a new collection inspired by what she had found. Each piece named after an emotion the algorithm could identify. Grief, guilt, longing, courage. But deep down, she knew something else was coming. She was right. 3 nights later, her studio was broken into. Nothing was stolen, except the memory card. She sat in the wreckage, her hands trembling. Her designs were untouched. Her machines were fine. But the card gone. She knew it had to be someone close. Someone who knew exactly where to find it. Someone with something to lose. The next morning, she received a message. No sender. Just a file. When she opened it, a video played. Her father. In a boardroom. Surrounded by executives. One of them, a woman, with sharp eyes and a smile like ice, was speaking. If your daughter continues to push this, we will act. Quietly. Efficiently. We're not in the business of letting memory leak into market. Sundar didn't speak in the video. He only lowered his head. The screen went black. Anaya stared at the screen long after it ended. She felt betrayal, not just from strangers. But maybe from her own father. That night, she stood on the roof of her building, watching the city below. The world was moving. Unaware, but inside her, a fire was rising. Her mother had tried to protect something beautiful. Her father had tried to hide it. And now, it was up to her. Not to fix the past, but to decide what future she was willing to fight for, and who she could still trust. Because the silence wasn't safe anymore. It was a warning. And in that silence, something dangerous was watching. Waiting. Planning. And next time, it wouldn't just take a card. It would come for her name, her work. And everything she loved. Asterisk, the weight of Namis wind pushed gently against the windows of her studio. But inside, Anaya's world had already shifted. The video of her father, silent in that boardroom, played again and again in her mind like a song she couldn't forget. The sharp-eyed woman, the threat, his silence. Silence, she had always believed, was a form of strength. Her mother wore it like a cloak, her father like armor. But now that same silence felt like surrender. For 2 days, Anaya didn't leave her studio. She shut off the lights. She turned away every phone call. She ignored her inbox, though it swelled with subject lines like urgent inquiry, press request, internal leak. Even her team, the small group of designers and collaborators who had helped shape her brand, stayed away. They could feel it. Something inside her changed, not anger. Not fear, something deeper, a kind of mourning, not for a person, but for the illusion of safety. Her father had always seemed invincible, not because he was rich, not because of his title, but because he had principles, because he made the world feel less cruel. Now that idea felt cracked, like glass too thin to carry the weight of the truth anymore. On the third morning, just before dawn, her phone buzzed once. A message, no name, no greeting. You were never supposed to find Vimina. It was a mistake. Your mother left it behind. This is your final warning. You walk away now, and we forget this ever happened. Anaya stared at the screen. She didn't reply. Instead. She got up and walked to the small table where she kept a copy of her father's sketches, the unfinished designs from his time in Kyoto. She opened the one titled for Anaya and ran her fingers over the lines. Soft, intentional, not just fashion, but emotion. He had loved her. She believed that. But sometimes love came wrapped in fear, and now she had to decide what kind of love she would carry forward, the kind that protected truth or the kind that hid it. That afternoon, she went to her father's office for the first time since the video. She didn't call ahead. She walked past security, past the wide glass walls that gleamed with Google's clean modern future, and stood outside his door. When he saw her, he didn't look surprised, only tired. He stood and closed the door. Behind her, neither of them spoke for a moment. Then Anaya stepped forward and placed her phone on the desk. I saw the video, she said quietly. Sundar didn't flinch. He just nodded. Double quotes. I was trying to protect you, he said, almost in a whisper. From what? She asked. Truth? He looked away. From the people who don't care who they destroy. The ones who smile at you on stage and erase you behind. Closed doors. Your mother and I built them on it to help people. But once others realized what it could do, it stopped being about help. It became a tool, a weapon. Anaya's voice shook. You let them take it, and now they're coming after. His jaw tightened. I didn't let them. I made a trade. Your safety. For silence. I thought they'd honor it. I was wrong. She stared at him. They broke into my studio. His hands clenched. I know, and they'll keep pushing. Until you give up. Or until you fight back. He looked up, meeting her eyes for the first time. But if you fight, you have to be ready to lose everything. Anaya felt the room press in around her. Even you, she asked. His voice was barely audible. Even me. That night, she sat on her roof again, watching the lights of the city blink, trying not to disappear. The sky above held no answers, only the quiet ache of decisions waiting to be made. And then, a sound behind her. Asterisk, she turned. RIS. He walked toward her slowly, holding something in his hand. You didn't ask who gave you up, he said quietly. Anaya stood. What? He looked at her, shame in his eyes. I told someone about the card. A friend. I didn't mean to. I thought he could help, but he wasn't who I thought he was. He handed her a flash drive. Asterisk. They tried to erase the data from your studio. But your mother was smarter than that. She kept backups. I found this in her old hard drive. Anaya took it, not sure whether to thank him or walk away. I'm sorry, she said. For everything. For the past. For what I cost you now. She stared at him. You didn't cost me anything, she said. You just reminded me what the truth looks like, even when it's ugly. The next morning, she released a post on her design site. No headlines, no branding, just a quiet entry called The Shape of Silence. she wrote about Vimana, about the algorithm, about her parents, about fear and choices, and the price of building something that sees people for who they are instead of who they pretend to be. The post didn't go viral. It didn't need to, because within hours, she received the first message. I used to think silence meant weakness, but your work reminded me it can also mean listening. Thank you. Then another. I lost my sister last year. Your dress, grief in silk, helped me walk through her funeral feeling whole. Then another dot from an anonymous engineer. I worked on a version of Vimana 5 years ago. I buried it. I still have the logs. By nightfall, something had started. Not a protest dot, not a campaign dot, a quiet ripple. Movement without name. People were beginning to remember what it felt like to be seen dot, not targeted. Not sold dot, just seen dot. But just as the ripple began to grow, Anaya received a final message. A voice note dot, no text dot. She played it. A distorted voice spoke, calm and terrifying. You've made your choice. You think kindness is stronger than control. Let's see how strong it is when we take your name from you. One letter at a time. Then silence dot, and then the sound dot, static dot, followed by the faint, unmistakable click of a camera shutter dot. Someone was watching. Someone was already inside dot, and they weren't coming for a card anymore. They were coming for everything she had built, everything. She was asterisk more than a name, and I didn't sleep that night. Not even for a second. She sat in the corner of her studio, the lights off, her body wrapped in one of her own designs, a shawl of pale blue linen, stitched loosely down the center. A piece she had called unfinished. She had never sold it. It was too personal. The first piece she made after her mother died. She hadn't understood it back then. Why she chose soft blue. Why she stitched it with uneven lines. But now she did. It was the color of grief you wear quietly, like a second skin. The shape of questions you never get answers to. Outside, the city moved like it always did. Cars passed, sirens echoed far away. The world carried on as if nothing had changed. But everything had. Her name was no longer just a name dot, it had become a target dot by morning. The silence broke dot, a news article hit the internet. CEO's daughter. Involved in illegal data theft linked to unreleased AI project. They didn't mention Vimana. They didn't need to. They painted her as reckless, dangerous, privileged, unstable. They dug up old photos, twisted her interviews, hinted at things never said. It wasn't an attack. It was an erasure. Slow, calculated, cruel dot. Her brand's online store was hit with fake orders, spam reviews, refund requests by the thousands. Collaborators backed out. A fashion magazine pulled her interview hours before printing. Someone inside the system was pulling strings, cutting cords, piece by piece, just like the voice had warned, one letter at a time. She called her father. His voice was heavy, quiet. I saw the article, he said. They're trying to destroy me, she whispered. No, he said gently. They're trying to make you afraid of who you already are. Then why aren't you stopping them? His pause was long. Because I can't. Not this time. They built walls I can't climb without losing everything. Then maybe it's time someone breaks the walls instead, she said. Her voice sharp but steady. She spent the next 48 hours preparing. She didn't sleep. Didn't eat. Didn't speak to anyone except one person, Rishi. Together, they went through her mother's backup files, every log, every entry, every design of Vimana she could find. They pieced together a timeline, created a digital archive, and then they wrote something, not a press release, not a defense dot, a manifesto dot, titled The Quiet Code. In it, she explained everything. How her parents had built a tool not to control, but to listen. How it was buried when it threatened the wrong kind of power. How it was stolen again when she tried to tell the truth. How fashion had become her way of coding human feeling into something you could touch. Because not everyone reads code, but everyone wears something. and how she no longer cared about protecting a name, not even her own. I am not a legacy, she wrote. I am not a brand. I am not someone else's silence. The night before she released it, she stood again on her studio's roof. Sky was heavy with clouds. No stars. She closed her eyes and remembered her mother's voice in the letter, shine without permission. And for the first time she understood, truth was not always loud. Sometimes it whispered. But when it whispered from the right place, with love, with memory, with pain, it became impossible to ignore. She released the manifesto at 5:42 by 6:15 a.m. It had been shared 20,000 times. By 7:30 a.m. Journalists began calling, not to accuse, but to ask. By 10 a.m. People all over the world were posting photos of themselves wearing her designs, tagging them with the phrase hashtag I am more than my name, but not everyone celebrated. At 11 a.m. She received a cease and desist letter from a corporate law firm connected to an international tech conglomerate. Threatening action, threatening ruin. She posted the letter publicly. Underneath, she wrote, "They told me to stay silent." I said no. At noon, Sundar walked into her studio. Not as a CEO, not as a fixer. As a father. He looked around at the mess, the exhaustion in her face, the designs pinned to the wall like dreams held together by thread and willpower. He didn't speak. He just walked to her. And hugged her. Not gently. Desperately. She let herself fall into that hug. Like a daughter again. Like a child who had carried too much for too long. They won't stop. He whispered, "Then let them try," she said. The next week changed everything. Instead of disappearing, her manifesto sparked a quiet revolution. Not just in fashion. Not just in tech. In how people thought about stories, silence, and the value of emotional truth. Anaya didn't become a celebrity. She became something else. A symbol. Not perfect, not polished, but real. She returned to designing not for trends, not for markets, but for people. Every piece she released came with a handwritten note, not typed, not mass produced. Each one written by her. Simple words. You are allowed to feel. You don't need to earn your softness. What they tried to bury in you can still bloom. 1 year later, a museum in Kyoto held a quiet exhibition. It featured 3 items. Her father's unfinished coat. Her mother's final sketchbook. And a new piece by Anaya. A long black jacket, stitched in red thread on the inside, where only the wearer could see, were 5 words. I was never just her. As the room slowly filled with visitors. A child pointed to the coat and asked, "Who made this?" Anaya stood nearby and answered without hesitation, "My parents." "And this one?" the child asked, touching the new design. Anaya smiled. "That one's still becoming." Because that was the truth. You are not your fear, not your silence. You are becoming. And that is more than enough. Asterisk.